Hello, welcome to ISEP's Japan Pre-Departure Orientation. This is for everyone attending a program in Japan through ISEP Study Abroad. My name is Joey Havoc. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the Student Services Officer for Asia, Africa, and Middle East, coming to you live from ISEP Global Office in Roslyn, Virginia. Today on the agenda, we will be talking about the culture and daily life in Japan, some academic matters to get to know before you go, health and safety to make sure you are safe as possible while you are there, and also some tips and tricks to touch and keep in touch with ISEP, and also some things to know before you go. So to jump right in, let's talk about your experience in Japan. What will it be like? So Japanese culture at large. Japanese culture is rooted in thousands of years of Buddhist and Confucian thought, and this very much pervades a lot of the kind of deep-rooted cultural values in Japan. But on the other hand, social, political, and technological innovation is in a state of constant change where people are always trying to get ahead of what the next best thing is. So you kind of find these two things in a kind of a tension with each other, these opposites that make an incredibly exciting cultural experience for anyone visiting Japan and living there. So it's historically thought of as an entirely homogenous population, with many of the Japanese folks living there for many, many years. But as time goes on and as the nation progressive, you'll find that there's actually a higher ethnic and indigenous diversity of mixed race citizens, which are referred to harufu. The Japanese work culture can also be seen as linked with an individual's identity. This means that Japanese are living to work, not particularly working to live. So for instance, you might find someone's introducing themselves as, I am Nissan's Miss Nakagashi, which kind of goes in line with the idea that Japanese folks are very, very passionate and connected with their work. In Japanese culture, cleanliness and hygiene are totally prioritized too, which certainly in the COVID-19 pandemic era has been one of the reasons why they have been able to keep a relatively low rate of COVID cases. The daily life in Japan, work and education is prioritized as the main ways for Japanese to spend their time. Japanese people work throughout all hours of the day, and if they're not, they're probably going to school. But if they do have some spare time, they spend time with their family, spending time outdoors, sharing food, some of the favorite Japanese pastimes. You'll notice there are kind of many invisible and visible rules related to courtesy and respect. Visible being bowing and courtesy manners, ways to eat. We'll talk about that later. The invisible rules are those such as how you refer to elders, how you pay attention to the hierarchy that exists in a certain space. This respect for elders, the concept of saving face, which refers to one's own reputation, and respect for social harmony are all considered highly important in Japanese culture. To talk a little bit about that interpersonal relationship, this graphic on the left here is a really helpful way to think about the different levels of social interaction. So the closest level is your family, your close friends, associates. This is considered the amai. The second level is a little more formal, maybe colleagues, people you don't know as well, maybe a little outside of that kind of close family. And then the third, the casual context, this kind of anonymous social relations, sphere of open competition, people who you would generally almost even ignore if you don't even know them. So if you meet someone in Japan, you may wish to give them a little bow depending on which level they are in, but you do not necessarily need to bow to everyone who bows to you. It's very much determined by the other person's social status and how well you know them. It should be stressed that you should respect other people's space, such as making sure you remove your shoes before you enter their home, understand the certain gender dynamics within a space, and also even the offering of small gifts as an act of reciprocity. If you are referring to a professor or someone in a more esteemed position than you, or even just a sign of respect, you can refer to them as with the suffix of san. So for instance, if you're talking to your coordinator, you might say, hello, Chise-san. or when her name is just Chise. Or for me, you would refer to me as Joey-san. It's a sign of respect. As mentioned, there's a sort of informal tiered system when working with people around you. Talking about someone's space, let's talk a little bit about housing. If you were invited to someone's house, this is considered a very, very nice gesture. So it is customary to bring a small gift with you to show your respect. This doesn't have to be anything glitzy, just a little small something. Make sure you remove your shoes. Shoes are almost never accepted inside buildings, such as a house. Tatami mats are very common, a kind of construction of bamboo and other materials that create a pliability in the board. Like I said, cleanliness is highly prioritized in the house, and you'll find that almost always it's very neat and tidy. And ISEP students must stay on campus. ISEP students may stay on campus, homestays, or local housing near the campus. For meals, my personal favorite thing to talk about: rice, fish, vegetables, miso soup, other meats, ramen noodle soup, sushi, tempura. The list goes on and on and on. You'll find that the urban centers will have higher varieties of international cuisine, such as burgers and pizza and things like that. But I highly recommend you explore a little bit to your own comfort level when trying new food. If you want to say thank you, a common phrase is itadakimasu. Itadakimasu. That means I give thanks for this food. Food is considered an art form in Japan, particularly if you're going to more established fine dining places. So make sure you treat it with the respect that it deserves. In restaurants, you'll find that presentation is super important in Japanese cuisine. There are 4 very distinctive seasons that offer new offerings each throughout the year. So you'll find that menus at the same restaurant may change a lot depending on what season it is. Additionally, cuisine can really vary greatly by the region, so make sure you get around Japan and try all the local specialties. You might enjoy going to the izakaya, which is kind of close to a pub or a bar, and they often offer the tabidohai or nohimoho dai deals for a set price to get you an hour or 2 to eat or drink as much as you like. This seems really great. I think you should try it. Lastly, do not tip. It's actually considered rude, so you don't need to worry about any tipping. All right, technology in Japan. Don't worry about the power outlets. The good news is that you probably don't have to worry about any issues with keeping your devices charged because they use the standard plugs that are seen through much of America. Internet access. Do rent a SIM card or hotspot. Check with your local internet provider or your phone provider. The JR Rail Pass, we'll talk about it in a second here, helps you get around. And typically you can use a smart card or some sort of a credit card to make sure you can get funds. To talk about funds, Japan uses the Japanese yen, but many places may still only accept cash. Seven Bank is a great place to do your local banking if you need to, as many debit cards and credit cards can carry transaction fees. If traveling between cities, the trains can be the quickest way, but they can be quite expensive. So once again, you can use the JR Rail Pass to get better deals. There are what's considered 100 yen shops, which are typically cheap grocery stores. You can kind of get a bunch of different things there. It's a great way to purchase items on a budget. Contrastingly with a lot of other places in the world, fresh fruit and fresh vegetables can actually be kind of expensive. So make sure you put that in your budget. And if you are interested in kind of seeing some of the Japanese attractions and religious structures, temple passes are a really great way to save some money. Transportation in Japan. So metro subway systems can be really complex, yet once they figure it out, they are incredibly efficient. An IC card or JR Rail Pass can get fares automatically discounted, and Hyperdia is a great app to use to see train schedules and rates. When you are in your spare time, you may find that Japanese also like to do a lot of different sports and leisure activities, such as baseball. It is truly one of the most popular spectator sports. And if you're from America, where certainly baseball is very popular, I'd be very interested to know your experience in going to a Japanese baseball game. Other sports include soccer, martial arts, running, swimming, and tennis. But sumo wrestling is the Japanese national sport. I would highly recommend if you get the opportunity to go to experience a sumo wrestling match. It is a truly anthropological Japanese experience. Additionally, Japanese hold nature and the environment to a very high regard. So go on some hikes, go see the nature, go see the trees, go see, what that part of the earth looks like. You will not be disappointed. I will not read out all of these, but I've listed some of the major holidays and vacation periods in very tiny font. I apologize for that. Um, but be aware of when offices, universities might be closed, or businesses might be closed due to the different periods throughout the year. Golden Week is an especially important one to keep in mind of. This is April 29th through May 5th, where almost all businesses are closed and people can spend time with their families and their friends. Some things you may not know. So for instance, taking off your shoes, as I mentioned, is very traditional, very common. So look for cues if you do need to take them off, such as a raised floor at the entrance of the house. It is considered rude or even low class to eat or drink while walking in the city or on public transportation. Make sure you're sitting down when you're eating. When you're using chopsticks, never let them rest on top or inside of your food. Place them next to your plate. Finally, slurping your noodles is actually seen as a compliment. It's shown as that you are really, really enjoying your time. So slurp away, be loud and obnoxious by it, but also maybe just pay attention to what people are doing around you. Culture shock. Culture shock is the experience of seeing and being in a new culture, and noticing that there are many differences that you might not totally understand. We have created some handouts and tips for how to deal with it and navigate it, and understand that it probably will happen because it happens to everyone. So be prepared for it. Check out the handout. Finally, I'll talk about some of the reflections from past ISEP students. Mostly students recommend to, be prepared, ask questions early and often. Make sure that you connect with other international students, make those connections, make an effort with the local language, and make sure that you are being adaptable and flexible in any given situation. Always say yes to a new experience if you feel somewhat drawn to do so. While it's important to take rest days, it's important to take care of yourself by finding new hobbies and things outside of staying at home and just focusing on your schoolwork. So you are studying abroad, which means that we need to talk about your academic life. The higher education system in Japan, they are a leader in technology, business, and economics. Many of you will probably be studying some of these subjects. Typically, 3 to 5 year universities are highly sought after by Japanese students, but there are also vocational schools, associate degrees, bachelor degrees, master degrees, all of those things. You will likely need to take a JLP test, Japanese language proficiency test, before you get there if you are taking some sort of Japanese language. You get a scale of 1 to 5, and there's more information about this in your pre-departure materials. Campus culture. So students study extremely hard to get into the university. But ironically, once they are there, the philosophy changes a little bit to a more relaxed one where they don't focus as much on their studies and perhaps focus a little more on whatever this person is doing in the right-hand picture. There are lots of student clubs, organizations, and sports teams available, and there's student circles dedicated to hosting international students. Bukatsu are very intense sport teams where you get to eat, breathe, and live that sport. This is kind of considered the varsity level. And sometimes students get part-time jobs where you can be paid directly. There are very few assignments throughout the semester, but there will be certainly an end paper exam, something like that. But do please attend class and inform your professors that you are an international student so you can set the appropriate expectations with them as well as yourself to know what you are getting into for a certain course. This chart shows the academic grading system. As you can see, it's pretty much an A through F scale with the percentages listed out there. Most courses are typically worth 2 credits each. 1 credit typically equals around 45 hours of work. Typically, a student will have an advisor on campus who helps with course selection and registration. This might be also your host ISEP coordinator, so ask more details on how that works. And only the courses that you officially register for will officially appear on your transcript, so make sure you are truly enrolled. In interacting with your professors, they might be a more casual distance form of assessment than you used to. Still, professors are seen in high regard and should always be respected. The san suffix is a great thing to use with your professors. Introduce yourself at the beginning of the semester as an international student, and sit near the front of the class. You want to be engaged in your studies, and you will be able to kind of tell the vibe of the class as you continue forward with your semester. Health and safety. So obviously, health and safety is the #1 priority for all students on ISEP programs. My personal thought is that if you are not healthy, if you are not safe, it doesn't really matter what you're doing in your classes, or it doesn't really matter what hikes you're going on. So we have an amazing health and safety presentation presented to you by our Health and Safety Task Force at ISEP. It goes over all the details that you need to know to make sure you are as healthy and as safe as possible on your trip. Also, if you have not put it in the ISEP emergency line, please do so now. Put it in your phone, remember it. If you ever have a problem or you don't know whom to get in touch with, or you're in a difficult situation, we are there for you. All students are required to enroll in ISEP insurance, and this can be summarized on Summary of Benefits page on our ISEP website. You can also just search ISEP insurance, and you will find that in Google. Your local country's embassy in Japan, contact them, see if they have a travel alert program, some way to message you, communicate with you if there is some sort of nationwide emergency or something the traveler should know. Once you get to Japan, make sure you provide your local contact information in the ISEP portal. This means going and maybe including your local address, your local phone number, maybe a social media network that you use so that we can get in touch with you if we need to. And likely, your host institution will also probably send university-wide text alerts, emails, or otherwise. So make sure you find the best way to get those updates. Some information about health and safety in Japan. So typically the main things that you would ever need to worry about is maybe very low levels of petty crime or theft. So make sure you are, taking care of your belongings, not leaving them out in the public, but it's generally a very safe place. And typhoon season is also real. Typhoons do come through the area, but the good thing is that the Japanese have been experiencing typhoons for many, many, many years. So they are quite adept at dealing with them. Some more information on the health insurance. I won't cover this in depth, but the main idea is make sure that you have your health insurance ID cards in your wallet at all times. If you do need to go and use your medical insurance, you will need to submit a claim on our ISEP insurance page. If you need any assistance with payments or anything like that, please contact On Call International. Their information is on your insurance card as soon as possible. Finally, make sure you save all medical documentation receipts. This ISEP student insurance will cover any medical costs above a $50 deductible. And yes, personal safety. This is common sense, folks. Make sure that you are paying attention to the local security warnings, on-site orientation briefings, local laws, and just being aware of your general surrounding. If something doesn't feel right, remove yourself from that situation. Make sure you're traveling in pairs or small groups rather than alone, especially if you're at night. Avoid any bad neighborhoods such as protests, things like that. And if you sense a potentially dangerous situation, remove yourself. Finally, if you are consuming alcohol, please enjoy it, but only in moderation. You'll be surprised how it can hit you while you're in a foreign country. Some things to know before you go. So, packing. Research what the weather will look like in the region of Japan you'll be studying in because it's a very diverse country in terms of weather. But generally, remember, you can always purchase new clothes once you're there, and this is also a good way to fit with the local fashion if you're interested in that. Leave space in your suitcase for extra clothes or souvenirs you'd like to bring, and always bring some items from home that you might want to have while you're there. If you are an ISEP Direct student, make sure you pay your program fee 30 days before the start date. Check your data plan with your phone provider for international plans, or make sure your phone is unlocked for a local SIM. Make sure you know the date and location of your host site orientation. This is going to be in your pre-departure information on your ISEP dashboard. Write down the address of where you're going and carry it on your carry-on. If you plan to take a taxi or rideshare from the airport, will your phone work upon arrival? And make electronic copies of all your important documents and upload them to a Google Drive or other online storage system so that you can access them at any time. Some things to know or think about when you arrive. It's always good to have a game plan when you arrive in your host country, such as how are you getting to your host university? Have you arranged some sort of airport pickup, or will you need to take public transportation? Do you have a way to contact your host ISEP coordinator when you arrive? How will you pay for your transportation if necessary? You'll likely need cash or for public transport, a taxi, and not all airports have free Wi-Fi, so you might have to pay for Wi-Fi once you get there. And some ways to keep in touch, because we want to hear about your experiences. So determine before you leave how you plan to stay in touch with your family and friends back home. We have some tips for staying in touch on our ISEP pre-departure materials. And remember to contact your family upon your safe arrival. They are probably worried sick about what has happened since you left your home country, and it would be great for you to let them know when you arrive. Finally, please do connect with us on social media. We have an ISEP Students Accepted Abroad and Alumni Facebook group where you can meet other people on Facebook. You can become a digital ambassador, which is a great way to build some of your own social marketing skills and share some of the content and experiences that you have seen while in Japan. And you can always follow us on Twitter and Instagram to follow some of your fellow ISEP students and see what other ISEP students are up to. And use hashtag ISEP Study Abroad to share photos and updates if you're sharing on it in social media. And with that, that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you so much for joining and listening. I'm so excited for you to experience Japan. It is a fantastic place with so many exciting people, and we could not be more excited for you to begin your ISEP journey. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.